Hello friends, come let's understand today about the types of derivatives. As I very clearly explained in my last session that derivative consists of forwards, futures, options and swaps. Now let's understand what is a forward. A forward contract is an agreement between a buyer and a seller to exchange a commodity or a financial instrument, a predetermined price and a predetermined future date. Please understand, it's an agreement between the buyer and the seller to buy or sell a commodity at a predetermined price or a predetermined future date. For example, if you are planning to buy a gold 3 months from now at the rate of 50,000 rupees per 10 gram, okay? Now you are deciding the 50,000 today and you are also deciding that the seller and the buyer, the delivery will happen after 3 months at this price. Now this we call it as forward contract. Now you will always have a problem with reference to understanding what is a forward contract and a future contract. Both are same. Both are very same. That is the forward contract and the future contract. The price and the delivery is settled at a future date. But it is decided today. Okay. Now what is the difference between a forward contract and a future contract? A forward contract is between the buyer and the seller outside the stock exchange. It could be between you and me. Okay. Now, if we are deciding to buy and sell a gold at a future date, the delivery will happen between you and me. Okay. There is no third party who will give guarantee for the delivery and guarantee for the price. Okay. This we call it as a forward contract. But whereas in the future contract, there will be a third party. Third party means on the umpire, okay, who we will enter in the contract and tell that third party to be there as a person who will settle the contract. That is, if I am planning to buy a gold at 50,000 rupees after 3 months, okay, if the contract is entered between the buyer and the seller, both the buyer will give the money and the seller will give the gold. Now who will do this? This will be carried out by the stock exchange and you will buy it in the stock exchange and the stock exchange will settle the money, stock exchange will settle the goods also. Now this we call it as a future contract. There's no difference between a forward contract and a future contract. Forward contract is between the individual A and B. The future contract is between the individual A and B, but there will be a third party who will settle the contract. We call it as a future contract. Now you may ask me, what is an option contract? Okay. In the case of an option contract, okay, now this is also a contract for a future date, but okay, in the case of an option, the contract between the buyer and the seller will be there to buy at a particular price, whereas in the case of an option, the buyer will have an option to buy, okay, at a predetermined price, okay, and the buyer will also, the seller has to compulsorily sell. The buyer will have an option to buy, the seller will compulsorily sell. Now we will get into the intricacies of options later, okay, but today we will understand about the forward, futures and options. Now as I very clearly told you, what is a forward, what is a future, what is option? In the case of an option, what? Option is also a future contract where the buyer will have an option to buy, okay, but in the case of a seller, he has to compulsorily sell. Similarly, if I have to call it as a put option, a seller will have an option to sell where the buyer has to compulsorily buy. We call it as a call option and a sell option. We will understand it with an example, because don't worry. Now we will understand only the forward, future and options. Okay. Once we understand these three, in our next class we will understand about how do they trade it in the stock market, and there is something called margin money, there is something called the marking to market, then there is something called settlement. That and all we will study in our next session.